Leo was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and why wouldn't it be? You've got a hotshot director like Lokesh Kanagaraj working again with Talapati Vijay. You have every reason to be excited for this movie, and after having seen the film, I will say that I definitely did like it. I really enjoyed myself, but I really wanted to love Leo. Instead, I'm going to delve into its positives, of course, but also its flaws and how it's reminiscent of the Marvel problem. Now, what do I mean by that? Keep watching the review to find out. There will be spoilers for the movie, so consider this a warning. Leo was super fun to watch, man. I mean, Lokesh always knows how to entertain his audience. The film started out really strong with intriguing antagonists and a thrilling intro for the main character as he dukes it out with a freaking hyena, which, by the way, looks really good. Props to the special effects department on that one. The first half of this film is really promising. You've got an interesting protagonist, Parthiban, played by a wonderful Vijay in top form in a setting we have never seen him in before. We know him as someone very capable, but also someone who always chooses the amicable option. He isn't looking for any trouble and just wants to get about his day peacefully. He has a loving family and a stable career as a coffee shop owner. That is until he is forced to act in a dire situation and tap into his primal side to save his daughter. And the reason that scene really works is because though we have seen our hero kick ass, taking a life is something he has stayed away from. When talking to his son, he poses an interesting dilemma where you have the opportunity to shoot a serial killer but questions the moral and ethical repercussions of such a situation where you might end up being a murderer while saving the lives of many. And this comes round when Parthiban himself is put under a similar situation and has to act immediately. On a filmmaking level too, the use of the dolly zoom during that moment really works as we see Leo's side take over Parthiban briefly to kill those men. It works because we see a person's true nature when they are put under extreme pressure with an important choice to make. And here we see that Parthiban is someone who's willing to take lives in order to protect his family. We realize the extent he's willing to go to when the situation requires it. But I also love that we see how much of a toll this takes on him. He's a human being after all. Taking a life is no small thing. And the effect it has on Parthiban also hints on his unknown past that we, and apparently even he, does not know about. Lokesh's filmmaking unsurprisingly worships the superstar but also never makes him a god we can't root for. At the end of the day, Parthiban's just a father and a husband who wants to ensure his family's safety, and we as an audience can empathize with that. The cinematography is also stellar. The film, just like many of Lokesh's other films, is soaked in shadows and the contrast makes the colors pop. Anirudh does not disappoint. I mean, look at his track record for just this year alone. It's crazy. And I wouldn't say that this is anywhere near his best work. I like some of the tracks, though I wasn't the biggest fan of the lyrics. I really felt that with more time he could have come up with something better. The score is serviceable enough to get a few cheers out of me in the cinema hall. Na Reddy was kind of fun. I really thought the theatre would erupt during that song, which unfortunately did not end up happening, but Vijay's splendid dance moves made that song worth it. Even the action, which is a primary component of the film, mostly worked for me. Lokesh revels in the gory violence of his action sequences, and I too had a great time with that. For the most part, the active camera work lends the scenes an energy that makes you feel the impact of the fights without once sacrificing the geography of the characters, never leading to disorientation. And I was really having a blast in the cinema hall. That intermission block genuinely left me excited to see what would transpire in the remaining hours of the movie. The film left on a crescendo with intrigue about Parthiban's past, while also setting up the conflict between protagonist and antagonist. I really wanted to know what's gonna happen next. And then the rest of the movie happened, and I was left a little disappointed. Whatever intrigue the film had built within me slowly faded minute by minute. Sanjay Dutt shows up claiming Parthiban is his son Leo, but then doesn't do anything about it for a long time. There's no genuine threat or conflict. The film just halts and goes into an ineffective flashback. And even that flashback started out strong with an entertaining intro for Leo, a character that I had hoped they would flesh out but failed to. We get a few scenes and a fun song with him, but I don't really know who he is. He even has a sister who barely gets any lines or a decent screen time, and we're supposed to care about her when she dies. I'm sorry, I don't even know who you are. We're introduced to these characters too quickly with barely any characterization and are asked to be invested in the stakes, and I just couldn't be. I wasn't bored, but I simply stopped caring after a point. And even after the temporary flashback, the film just lost its momentum. Its pacing felt odd with nowhere to really go. It barely tapped into all the interesting potential the film had spent so hard building throughout the first half. The villains just want Parthivan to admit he's Leo. That's literally it. That conflict is just super uninteresting to me. It just became a repetitive cycle of unnecessary fighting, the villains asking Parthiban to admit that he's Leo, which he doesn't do, continued by even more fighting, and even those started to get tiring after a point. The fight scenes, which at first felt like an outburst of a man with a pent up dark past, now just started to feel like an uncreative series of punches and kicks with no real stakes or suspense. There's no real writing to the fighting, just the usual one goon approaches the hero, gets his ass handed to him, and then the next goon faces the same. And don't get me wrong, those are fun too, but for how long? There's even a car chase that looks like a video game cutscene with no real weight or believability to it. Even the filmmaking just felt aimless around the end with pointless dolly zooms and needlessly stretched action sequences. Even the answer to the primary question everyone's been asking about whether Parthivan really is Leo was disappointing. The film did go to some interesting places when we see Parthiban just frustrated with everyone doubting his identity and breaks down in front of his wife. There's character there, there's raw emotion there. But then the film just lazily handles the resolution by saying that yes, Leo is Parthiban. And I just was not satisfied with that conclusion. It felt like it undid the impact of that scene with his wife. And if you're finally getting to the Marvel problem, I want to talk about how connecting this film to the Lokiverse took a toll on its quality. One question that was on everyone's mind after watching the trailer was, is this movie part of the Lokiverse? And I too was wondering whether Lokesh had just made a standalone commercial film or whether he was expanding his universe. Either way, what mattered to me most was that I have a good time at the movies and the film works as a standalone piece of cinema. And the cameos at the start were fun, but I feel like sometimes the film would be preoccupied in building the universe rather than having a more singular focused narrative. And don't get me wrong, Lokesh has done this before and done it better. In Vikram, the cameos of characters from Kaidi are seamlessly blended into that world without really calling attention to itself in a way that it distracts from the story of that movie. Vikram managed to tell its story with focus, while the universe building only added to the lore of a world that the film had spent time crafting carefully. But here, I did not get that. Hearing Kamal Hassan's voice should have gotten me more excited than I was because I wanted to care about the world of Leo and its characters much more than I actually did. This is the Marvel problem that I was worried about for the film. When hearing all the buzz about whether the film would be part of the LCU, I was hoping that the film doesn't get too bogged down in building a cinematic universe and tells its singular story well. Now I know, I'm probably being very harsh, especially for a film that I still overall like. But my frustration stems from the fact that I love Lokesh Kanagaraj's films and he's someone with a lot of talent and potential. For example, I find his use of needle drops very interesting and effective. And Leo showed a lot of promise, and that's why I'm upset that it did not live up to my expectations entirely. Though it's my least favorite Lokesh Kanagaraj film as of now, it's still a pretty good one at the end of the day. So, what does that say about him? Thank you guys for watching my review of Leo. I know I have not uploaded for like a month. Just been really busy with my life, but hey, I'm gonna try and talk about more films. Like, share, subscribe, you know the drill. Please support the channel, it means the world to me. And until next time, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.